I think plan ये है कि I'll just have a very short talk, like maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes, just that we're all on the same page, and then we'll open up for discussion. And ISCO we can keep as Corona, we can keep it beyond Corona also, you can just keep it an open floor. Just so that we all know what I do, I'm an infectious disease specialist, just ka matlab hai that I deal with infections, har qism ke infections. And this is a specialty of medicine, just like you have cardiologist, dil ke doctor, pulmonologist, lung ke doctor, so I'm an infection doctor, right? So I deal with all infections. I normally deal with HIV, that's my specialty. So jo Larkana ka outbreak I was involved in that. I work with WHO and the government, but आजकल मेरा पूरा जो ज़िंदगी है ना वो कोरोना पे अटकी हुई है. And what I'll do is I'll give you a short update कि कोरोना वायरस होता क्या है. And would you prefer English, Urdu, both? Is that anywhere like? Okay, so I'll just lapse between one or the other. So before we start, a quick recap on viruses. So I was like, it's always nice to know like coronavirus करते हैं, virus होता क्या है. So the first thing is कि remember we're not sure कि viruses are the living things or non-living things, right? So they're like sort of at the cusp of living, non-living. Maybe they're both, maybe they're neither. वो कुछ definition fit करते हैं नहीं करते. But they are one of our चार जरासीम जो हम infect करते हैं. So we have bacteria, we have fungi, funguses, we have protozoa जिसमें कीड़े मकोड़े आपके जो पेट में वाले कीड़े होते हैं, and then finally you have these viruses, right? So they're one of the four things जो हमको infect करते हैं. And इन viruses की खास बात ये है कि they बुनियादी तौर पे what they do is that they will hijack your cells and they'll make your cells into a virus making factory, and they'll just pump out virus, and the cell dies that way. So that's what they do. Virus की खास बात ये that they infect pretty much all living things. So they're not just for us humans. Animals have their own viruses, plants have their own viruses, even bacteria which infect you have their own viruses infecting them. So viruses infect like all living things. But okay, the cool thing is that we've also now manufactured viruses which can actually kill the bacteria जो आपको तंग कर रहे हैं, right? So this is bio-warfare that we do. So all living things get their own viruses, मगर they're very picky. So bacteria का virus आपको नहीं infect करेगा. A bee का virus which is going to destroy their wings will not infect you. So and even within the body, they will infect their cells that they like. So some viruses infect the liver, कुछ lung को करते हैं, कुछ brain को करते हैं, and they tend to like their own thing. So they're very picky that way, which is an important point जो आगे आएगा. मगर कोरोना वायरस क्या होता है? So कोरोना वायरस जो है is a family of viruses, right? So एक वायरस नहीं है, बहुत सारे खानदान हैं. अगर मिसाल दूँ तो जैसे घर की बिल्ली होती है, बिल्ली के खानदान है, right? So उसमें शेर है, चीता है, टाइगर है, सब हैं. But they're all part of the same family. The coronaviruses are also a big family, and they call corona because you have to use your imagination, but this looks like a crown apparently, right? So, and corona means crown, right? So I can't see it, but that's what they say, that the coronavirus is called corona because of the crown. And normally they cause respiratory diseases, right? So ear, nose, throat, lungs, that's what they normally cause. And they come in two flavors, two bade types of coronaviruses. Names are not important, but they're called the alpha corona and the beta coronaviruses, right? इस कमरे में किसको कोरोना वायरस हो चुका है? All right, so the alpha coronaviruses जो है ना, they're actually very common, and we've all had this. We've all been infected with the coronavirus. ये वाले जो होते हैं, जो नज़ला खांसी ज़ुकाम जो मौसमी जो होता है, उसका one of the most common cause is this coronavirus, right? The alpha coronaviruses. And अब जब हम check करते हैं तो even अभी भी AQ में I know there are a couple of people infected with coronavirus, मगर not वो खतरनाक वाला, मगर this वाला, the normal वाला coronavirus, right? जिसकी हम बात करें is a different one. This is the beta coronaviruses, right? So and ये जो China वाला है ना, this beta coronavirus. इनकी खास बात ये, and I hope this works, is कि these tend to be infecting bats. And bats may be, you don't have one corona, you have lots of coronaviruses circulating in this population. बेचारे चिमगादड़ों को भी नज़ला खांसी ज़ुकाम हो रहा होता है, they get better, they get worse, and यहाँ पे circulate कर रहे होते हैं. मगर interesting बात ये कि ये coronaviruses can sometimes jump. So जैसे 2003 में we had one virus called the SARS virus, which you may have heard, SARS virus, yeah? तो SARS virus जो है, this had jumped from bats into another animal called the the civet cat. एक दफ़ा उसमें घुस के it mutated, it changed थोड़ा सा, and then after it mutated, it was able to come into humans and infect humans, right? So that's what this coronavirus had done. And the second virus which did this is called the MERS virus, and the MERS-CoV virus, and this also went into bats, into camels this time. And camels say it went into humans after mutating, and ये वाला virus, SARS तो ख़त्म ही हो गया, मगर MERS-CoV जो है वो अभी तक we see, and we see this in the Middle East. So it's called the Middle Eastern Respiratory coronavirus, syndrome coronavirus. So ये अभी भी we see it. It's in the Gulf, यहाँ पे नहीं आता, दुनिया में नहीं फैलता, मगर it's a bad virus. It will kill you a lot of times, and that's what we are. The one we're talking about now is, उसका अब नाम change होता रहता है, and we'll tell you इसका नाम क्यों change हुआ है, मगर इस वाले virus को, the one जिसकी आज हम बात कर रहे हैं, is called the SARS-CoV-2 virus, right? So ये वाला virus भी has come from bats. It went into another animal. We don't know कि कौन सा जानवर है अभी. It's still very new. And from here it went into humans. And from humans please go into humans. There we go. So from there it went into humans, and then it went from human to human to human. And this is what this virus does, right? So this is what the one we're talking about. And the reason and the problem is it's going from person to person, and that's why we're worried कि ये हर जगह फैल जाएगा पूरी दुनिया में. And to be very honest, the reason, and I'll show you कि कैसे फैला है, मगर the virus का नाम is the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and the confusion ये है कि it causes an infection, yes, जिसका नाम है COVID-19, yes. Usually in these coronaviruses there's been an intermediate animal, and not directly from bats. So bat soup खाने से कुछ भी नहीं होगा. You can eat your bat soup, you'll be fine. And skin of the animal we think is the pangolin, maybe, which is this sort of we've seen an armadillo, right? So if an armadillo has a baby with a rat, that's what it would look like a scaly sort of an animal. So this is, and the naam jo hai na, wo thoda sa change hote rehte hain. It used to be called the novel coronavirus, right? That was before it got a name. Eventually WHO gave it a name, and it called it the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Magar the bimari jo paida karta hai, it's called the COVID-19. Right? So there's all these names which keep floating around, and this keeps changing. This happened last week, so maybe next week it'll change again. Magar the important thing is ये बहुत नई बीमारी है. This we first found out about this just December 31st. So just 6 weeks ago is when the world knew about this virus. Right? So it's a very, very brand new bimari. And initially we thought this was in a seafood market in Wuhan. The seafood markets in China do not sell only seafood. They sell all sorts of animals, right? So they'll sell, and Chinese will have protein from a lot of different sources. They're not sort of picky like us and only eat like cows and goats and sheep and chicken. They're okay with eating a lot of different proteins. So there are a lot of different animals जो वहाँ पे बेच रहे होते हैं. This is not because of fish, right? So even though it's the seafood market, ये मछलियों से नहीं आया है. And I said initially thought because pehle cases were from people around that market. Magar China is great. I mean, in the sense that they have a very good surveillance network, and they went back and they saw कि ये probably November से ही ये फैल रहा था यहाँ पे in that area. And उसके बाद से it's been confined mostly to China. So that's the other thing to remember. It's pretty much only in China. Magar the numbers are astronomical, and this is just as of yesterday, right? So 73,000 cases so far, in which between day before yesterday and today, there's about 2,000 new cases. There have been 1,870 deaths from this disease. But remember, outside China, there's only 804, less than 1,000 outside China. So, compare between 72,000 and 804. So mostly in China. And China se bahar, if you look at deaths, there are only 3 deaths. Right? 25 countries involved. Chota sa hai, magar you can see pretty much all around the world. And let me see if this works in this particular laptop. Yes.
800 outside China.
Yes.
Does this include people in the cruise ship?
This includes people in the cruise ship, right? So the bichare, it's a big bug. So yeah. So and bichare the cruise ship wale jo hai na, if you look at the countries where they come from, it says ye mulk, and then it says others. And I was like, others kaun hai? So बेचारे वो किसी मुल्क में नहीं आते. They're anywhere. But yeah, cruise ship is one of them. And if you look at the march of this virus, you can see as the days went by, the numbers in China kept increasing, and then it went from one country, 2, 3, 4, and kept going from country to country to country. This is 29 to 30th. That's now February. And you can see as the numbers increase, it's gone to places, and even within countries, the numbers keep rising more and more. And this goes on till the 17th of like parson tak. And I now know that even in Iran, we have 2 new cases now, right? So as of, I think, just today. So numbers have just keep going up and up. सवाल ये है कि पाकिस्तान में cases हैं कि नहीं है, right? So that's the number one thing we need to know. जवाब ये है कि नहीं. We have no cases in Pakistan at this point. And so far, within the country, we've checked about 80 or so people, and every day बढ़ता रहता है. And जितने भी check किए suspected, उनको नहीं निकला. And suspect क्यों करते हैं? They come from China या an area जहाँ पे वो है, and they have like a fever, sore throat, वगैरह वगैरह. So of the 80 that we've checked so far across the country, there have been no cases, right? So sigh of relief. सवाल ये कि how bad is it? Well, I don't know. I don't know how bad it is, because it all depends. कि what do you mean by bad? Bad का मतलब क्या है? You know, what do you mean by bad? And you know, if I try to define bad या badness, there are actually 2 ways we can look at it. We can either look at कि contagious कितना, कि कितने लोगों को लगेगा ये बीमारी, and it's always useful to compare this to बीमारियां which we know about. So if you look at how bad a disease is, and these are diseases which are really contagious, and ये वो हैं जो कि बेचारे फैलते नहीं हैं एक से दूसरे से. So if you look at measles, so measles is really contagious. So for every 1 person who has measles, every 1 person of measles, they're expected to give this infection to 15 other people. So measles is really one of the most contagious diseases that we have, right? If you compare this with another disease, which is Ebola, really scary, right? Ebola sounds just sun ke dar lagta hai. So if you compare this to Ebola, so every 1 person of Ebola will only give it to 1 more person, right? So not very contagious, right? And where does this COVID-19 fit in? Somewhere beech mein. I'm going to get a good workout of my legs today. So anyway, so somewhere beach mein, with 1 person infecting 3 people more generally, right? And unfortunately, hamara data keeps changing. So it's anywhere between 2 to 4, but 3 I thought would be a nice, easy number to remember. So not as contagious as measles, not as less contagious, but not terribly contagious. ऐसा नहीं है कि आप चल के जा रहे हैं and you see somebody with COVID-19 and वो सबको infect करते जा रहा होगा, right? So it's not so contagious, which is the good thing. And a lot of numbers, you don't have to really pay attention. Magar, I just want to put this in perspective with common diseases. So measles, mumps, chickenpox, common cold, very infectious. So every 1 person will infect with common cold will infect 6 other people. Things like MERS, bird flu, rabies, not very contagious. ये थोड़ा सा बीच में आता है, right? So around 3, so not too bad. And important चीज़ ये है कि numbers कम हो रहे हैं. So as of day before yesterday, हमारे rates जो हैं वो कम हो रहे थे of corona. इसको छोड़ दें, ये बीच में चाइना ने ना अपनी definition change कर दी, तो एकदम से numbers बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ गए थे. This is not a true increase in numbers. How about death? So the other way you can say कि कितना खराब एक बीमारी है कि how many people die of corona. So if I look at one disease like rabies, right? So again, a bad disease. If somebody gets rabies, what's the chance of survival? किसी को पता है? For every 10 people who get infected with rabies, we expect that at least all 10 will die. Rabies is 100% fatal. There's no cure for rabies. Lag gaya to that's it. You're done, right? On the other hand, if I look at another common disease, dengue, and slide cut gayi hai because you won't see now. For every 1 person infected with dengue, and you can't see it because, and I'll tell you what you're seeing is कि वो जो बंदा है ना, the first वाला, उसके टांग लाल हैं सिर्फ, right? So of every 1 person infected with dengue, every 10 people, like 0.1% will die. Dengue में लोग नहीं मरते हैं generally, right? So it's a very safe disease. And what about COVID-19? So every 10 people infected, 2 people will die, right? So it's not so bad, right? So the 98% people will generally get better. And again, if I put it into perspective, COVID-19 will fit somewhere over here, corona wala, right? ये आपके ज़्यादा नहीं मारते. Really, nobody dies of a common cold, right? Even though you feel like you're going to die. Because a number of, I'll tell you that. Number, and I'll tell you there's another reason also. So nobody dies of a common cold, even though you feel like you're dying when you have it. Rabies, everybody dies. Bird flu, MERS, a lot of people die, right? So not terribly high. And it's interesting, and if you notice, ये वाली बीमारियाँ वो हैं जो कि जानवरों की इंसानों में आई हैं, ये इंसानों की बीमारी है, because the virus does not want to kill you. बेचारा वायरस, अगर आप मर जाते ना तो वो वायरस के लिए बुरा है, because it can't spread to other people, right? So the virus wants you to be alive well enough that you can cough and cold and sneeze and go to places and spread. If you die, then you're done, when the virus is done also. So the viruses don't want to kill you, they're not bad. But to answer your question, it's not so simple, because जो लोग बूढ़े होते हैं ना, they tend to die more. So if you're 40 or less, your chance of dying is only 0.2%, very low with this. If you're more than 80, your chance of dying is 14.8%. Right, so very high. And normally जो लोग मर रहे हैं वो मर रहे हैं जिनको already कोई ना कोई मसला चल रहा है पहले से. So healthy people usually not dying. Healthy older people also usually not dying. It's younger or older people जिनको already कोई ना कोई मसले चल रहे हैं. And the number of people are so much कि अगर percentage निकालें तो वो वही 2% बनता है. So not high.
Is there a gender?
There is not a, there's not a gender. Yeah, there's not a gender. That's a very good question. We don't know the answer as yet. But generally, the बीमारी जो खराब होती है वो second week में होती है of getting the infection. So, all right. So to answer my question, how bad is COVID-19? Not very contagious, right? Rates are dropping. So good news, sigh of relief. 98% people survive, and if you are lucky enough, which I assume will not be, or not already, I will not tell you my age. If you're less than 40, then 99.8% chance of surviving, right? So not a terribly bad disease. To answer your question कि symptoms क्या होते हैं? So पहली चीज़ तो ये कि exposure, like बीमारी अंदर घुसने के बाद symptoms जो हैं वो तकरीबन 14 दिन के अंदर develop होते हैं. अब this is also debated, but usually, you know, if you're going to ask me, I'd say about एक हफ्ते के अंदर you will have symptoms. Most people by 14 days will have symptoms. होना तो पता लग जाएगा, but this is also changing थोड़ा सा. So you know this may change. And symptom होते क्या हैं? Interestingly, 1% लोगों को symptom होते ही नहीं है. Nothing. वो अंदर गया, आपने control कर लिया, बुखार कुछ भी नहीं हुआ, and आप ठीक हो गए. जिनको symptom होते भी हैं, उनमें about 80% people will only have नज़ला, खांसी, बुखार, and that's it. Right, so very mild symptoms. A few people will have a bad infection, including the lung infection, so 1 in 10. And ये वो लोग हैं जो कि usually मरते हैं, and उनकी recovery tends to be much longer. And इनमें से भी कुछ become very critical. Right, so generally, by and large, not very contagious, mild disease, and sometimes no disease even. So अब सवाल ये कि अब next time जब आपको नज़ला खांसी होगा तो आपको ये तो नहीं लग गया, right? So the answer is unlikely, because पाकिस्तान में बीमारी है ही नहीं, तो लगेगा कहाँ से, right? So आया कहाँ से आपको? So unlikely. You may have normal corona, right? But not ये वाला corona. Last 2-3 slides. How is it spread? It's spread by droplets, right? So ये जो जरासीम है वो निकलते हैं, and they will land about a meter away, right? So not any further. So if I have this and I cough, then you're all safe from me, right? So you're all far away, right? So unless I don't like you and I'll stand next to you and cough, and then you'll get it. But about a meter is how far, so 3 feet is what this is, a meter. एक चीज़ to keep in mind, and I just don't want to scare you, मगर in the hospital, it can become airborne, right? It can go into the air, because वहाँ पे जब हम suction और ये सब ventilator पे डालें, it can become airborne. But within, you know, normal circumstances, it will not go very far. Prevention क्या करें? Infectious disease वालों का हमेशा ये होता है, हाथ साफ करें. So इसमें भी यही है, हाथ साफ रखें. And try in public not to touch your mouth, or you know, touch your eyes, or pick your nose. I mean, for other reasons also, but you know, so because the virus would be on surfaces and you'll contaminate yourself. And what about masks? Okay, should we now start wearing masks outside, unless you're in Kimari, where you probably should be wearing a mask. So the answer is no. You don't need to wear a mask if you're out, because like I said, contagious nahi hai, and you have to be fairly close to get this infection. And one thing I just want to put out there, because I keep getting asked, mask white bahar, you have blue bar? And the answer is, it's blue bar. That's the manufacturer recommendation, right? The filter, according to that message, the filter is not the white part. The filter is between the white and the blue part. Uske beech mein hota hai. So even if you wear white bar, blue bar, it will make no difference. It's just the white inside is there to keep your nose and your mouth comfortable, right? So it's just, that's how you're supposed to wear the mask. Finally, a lot of other prevention things on WhatsApp, at least. Garlic, mouthwash, don't keep your mouth dry, vitamin C, use sesame oil. None of them really work, right? So they don't really help. And my last slide is, finally, are we prepared? And then we'll open up for discussion. So are we prepared depends on, so I'm going to talk about local, like local is as me being local is AKU, and then the country, and then the world, obviously, right? So if you look at AKU, at AKU at least we're prepared. We already have protocols in place to segregate patients jinko even before they're diagnosed. So the areas segregated away from patients where we first see कि उनको infection होने का chance है भी कि नहीं है, और उसके बाद then we move them sort of into isolation if we suspect it. We just recently had all of our systems re-evaluated by an independent body from Johns Hopkins, and they were pretty happy with what we have currently. We have not had a single case of ये वाला coronavirus. वो normal वाला तो हमारे पास आता रहता है every now and then. Is the country prepared? So is Pakistan prepared? Well, I'm on one of the national bodies for corona preparedness also, which is a pain because I have a meeting every day for 2 hours in the morning. Magar, I think we are. Surveillance activity is in full swing at this point. All passengers जो आ रहे हैं, they screened from when they're coming from China, and before they come, we actually know कि कौन-कौन से patient लोग आ रहे हैं. Their cards, which are supposed to be given on the plane, उसमें थोड़ी गड़बड़ होती है with screening questions, and then patients are shanti codified accordingly with that. अगर कोई suspected case आता है, so there's mechanisms where patients are called for 14 days कि आपको कुछ हुआ है कि नहीं हुआ है. We already have testing centers identified कि test कहाँ से होगा. For Sindh, it actually is AKU. For Punjab, it's Shaukat Khanum. The National Institute of Health in Islamabad does it for the rest of the country. हर शहर में, बड़े शहरों में, we have hospitals already designated, areas designated within the hospital कि क्या करना है. You can argue कि how well is the setup in those places, but a government hospital is we have to keep in mind the limitations. We already have SOPs in place which have been finalized कि अगर कोई case आता तो क्या करेंगे, and those are very detailed down to things like कि कचरे कैसे साफ करेगा उसका, how linen कैसा होगा, God forbid if there's a mortality, how will we dispose of the body. So it goes down to even that much detail in these SOPs. And then finally, education material has been developed for this. And what about the world? So the world really is unprecedented response. So अगर SARS को compare करें the other coronavirus, वो पहला था. उस ज़माने में चाइना ने सब कुछ छुपा दिया था actually. किसी को पता ही नहीं था. And when it came out into the world, we found out कि oh यहाँ तो कोई बीमारी चल रही है. So इस दफ़ा China, for whatever reason, probably, I mean, we'll say for goodwill, what it did is that it has opened up its borders, and it's not borders, but it's opened up its information gates. And it's very, very clearly telling us कि क्या है, क्या नहीं है. We know coronaviruses can spread. पहले मुझे पता नहीं था SARS के ज़माने में. So within a few weeks, we actually had the whole DNA ready of this virus, ताकि we can look for vaccines against this. इसी तरह से, there's been a very close watch. There's very rapid sharing of information, which is really a pain for people like me, because we have to. It's hard to keep track of हो क्या रहा है. So some of these slides. I made this talk like 2 days ago, and day before yesterday, this big article came out of all of the cases from China to redo all of the slides, because things just change so rapidly. And wo jo numbers ki slide, I just did it half an hour before coming in, because wo aaj ke numbers abhi aaye the. And then finally, because of this, our guidance is very nimble. It keeps changing depending on how our understanding changes, which also means that maybe next week, if I have to come and give this talk, it may be a little different from the next one. So, something to ponder about, something which is what about beyond the infection? And this is really a concern, because apart from this bimari and kaun bimar hai and sick hai ki nahi hai, what we are in the middle of what we would call as an infodemic. That's what WHO calls it. Jiske andar misinformation is traveling faster than the virus, right? And that is a major issue thanks to our well-connectedness in the world, close groups like WhatsApp. Information becomes viral, no pun intended, very fast. And that's one concern. So actually WHO has actually met with Facebook and Amazon and Google and told them to get, to make sure our searches are now focused more towards the correct information as opposed to the wrong information. The other thing which is really sad for me is the stigma and discrimination that this infection has brought. Now we know that infections bring stigma and discrimination. HIV is a great example of this, where our marginalized populations, our transgenders, our female male sex workers, our men who have sex with men get marginalized. But this has actually led to marginalization of a whole other population, which is the Chinese population. And it's bad. We had two people coming in to the ER with diarrhea, bichare, and the whole ER emptied out of fear. We know of people, kids who go to school with Chinese kids, and the school send them home कि आप certificate लेके आएं कि आपको corona नहीं है, right? So it's really bad, this marginalization. I've heard कि Dolman Mall नहीं जाना, वहाँ Chinese बहुत होते हैं, right? So this sort of stigmatization is another aspect of this infection you have to think about, a little bit beyond, is it bad or not? So the bottom line, don't panic. Almost all cases in China, no cases in Pakistan. जो cases हैं वो भी mild हैं, and deaths are usually really in the elderly, right? So that's sort of my quick 20-minute spiel on corona. But I would like to hear your thoughts, your questions. इसके बारे में या anything else, just not about the gas. I don't know much about the gas in Kimari at this point. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. If anyone has questions, I'll hand the mic.
So there's one here, there's one there.
Because we want the question in our Facebook also. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yes, somebody.
I was intrigued when you said that viruses are the cusp of living and non-living things. Could you sort of elaborate on that? That's
so
very interesting
it's a very philosophical question, is like what is living, right? So the viruses, for example, don't respire, they don't breathe, right? And really at the bottom of it, a virus is just a protein with some RNA or DNA inside it, right? So, but it is able to reproduce. It is able to evade the immune system. It is able to evolve and change. It doesn't eat, on the other hand, right? So it doesn't meet all the quote-unquote criteria of what's living and what's not. So that's what I meant by in the cusp of living and non-living. It's not like it'll become alive eventually. It's just that our definition, it doesn't fit our definitions clearly.
So why does bacteria qualify?
Because bacteria does do everything that humans do, right? So bacteria will eat. Bacteria breathe, bacteria reproduce by themselves without the help of anything else. Bacteria can move around, they're motile, they can move around. Bacteria evolve with time. So bacteria really are clearly living things. There's no, they're just like us. Yes, so.
I was interested in the...
Sorry, please. For the camera, so that we can have, he doesn't, our viewers who watch the video.
Yeah. I was interested in how AKU is carrying out the protocols which you made, the SOPs for testing.
Yes.
I believe there are some kits which are needed, which are emanating from China or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which have to be imported. Have you done that?
Yes, we've done that. So actually there are, so the kits ke andar hota ye that the methodology to test is actually not difficult. We know that we know the DNA of the virus. We just need to find a DNA which will match this and then amplify. That's how we do that. It's called a PCR test. That's what we do. So that kit, that chemical, that primer is what we need. And a lot of labs, once this came out, developed these. It takes time to import them. So we've actually now have kits from two places. When this happened, we started talking to University of Manchester, to WHO, and we got kits from them. Also, NIH got kits from China, and they distribute this to the 3 sites that they are. Now, the NIH kit came fairly late. It just arrived a couple of days ago. We already got the kit from WHO and from University of Manchester. And the thing is, once you get the primers, the chemical, it needs to be tested to make sure that we're able to run the sample properly. Usme bhi takriban hafta lagta hai. So at this point, we already have this up and running for AQ. But you can go today and get the test done. We won't do it, but you can get the test done. Because we have a limited stock, so we're only getting it for people who are suspected of having coronavirus, of this particular virus, not everybody walking in, even if you demand. And we also have the NIH kits now, which we will do free of cost for people referred from NIH to us. So, and to streamline things, we've actually identified collection points within Sindh, where, for example, agar Larkana mein case hai koi, so they know where to get the sample because it needs special media. They go to that lab and then it comes to us, and that's all free of cost from that end. So we have the testing capability now.
Dow also has facilities for testing.
Dow, yeah, so Dow, I don't know if they have facilities yet. I know Chuktai Lab does. Yeah, so they may have also gotten the same kit from NIH. So like I said, the methodology of doing the test is easy. We just need the chemical, that particular primer for corona.
Is this switched on? Okay. I was reading an article last week that influenza viruses causes more deaths than coronavirus in like a decade. But then according to the table that you've just put on your slides, it showed that influenza viruses compared to coronavirus has way less mortality and contagiousness. So how does that explain?
Yeah, so what I showed you was the mortality rate, so percent of people dying, but with influenza, the amount of people getting infected is way, way higher, right? So that's why the number of deaths is much higher. Same with dengue, for example. In a bad dengue season, we will see deaths here, even though the death rate is really low. But if the death rate is 1% and you have my maths is so bad. If you have 10,000 people infected, so that would mean that's 1,000 people who died. Right, so the number becomes high. So influenza spread is global; it's everywhere. And to be honest, we're currently seeing a lot of influenza. Right, so maybe 5 to 7 to 8 cases per day of influenza coming in. So with that amount of numbers, even if the mortality rate is low, the number of people dying is a lot more. But I mean, to give you a comparison, I think we're about 8. I don't want to give you numbers. So, but the numbers are really, really high for influenza. The other thing is it's a really unfair comparison between influenza and this coronavirus for a number of reasons. Influenza we know really well. We have a vaccine to prevent it. We have medication to give it. We also know that after you get influenza, you have a high chance of dying of a stroke or of a heart attack. In this one, secondary reasons. In this one, we really don't know much about this virus as yet. So it's sort of a very tough comparison between the two.
Thank you.
No, it was about the diagnosis, but you already answered it.
All right. And there was a question over, here. One more here, one more here.
Hi.
Hi, Tala.
How are you doing?
Good.
So I'm going to ask a question regarding the toxic gas leak.
Okay.
What is it? What do you think? And what is the clinical syndrome?
Yeah, the answer is I have no idea. The clinical syndrome looks like it's respiratory, right? And the problem is, at least for the gas thing, all the information I get is the information that you're getting. So I don't have any additional information beyond you. And I'm so skeptical about anything that I read, be it on social media or even in the news, because news is really repeating, regurgitating what they've read on social media. So at this point, I actually have no idea of what the gas is or what it's doing. All I know is that some people have died, and my kid is happy because uska school band ho gaya.
And is there work happening on developing a vaccine against COVID?
Yeah, so there is vaccine on this, and actually the issue is we don't know what the trajectory of this virus is. Will this completely die out now, like SARS did, or will this now become one of the many other respiratory viruses that we have? We know that viruses, once they come, new viruses, when they come into the human population, they actually become less and less and less severe as they adapt to humans and make us better vehicles for us to travel around. We're just a glorified bus for the viruses, right? So.
Hi.
Hi.
Could you please shed some light on the guidelines, as in the treatment of the coronavirus if somebody is suspected? So my question is, what is the criteria of suspicion.
Yes.
Are we grading it? Are we giving it like a point system? कि अच्छा ये symptom है तो आपको classify कर दिया like algorithm based. तो उसके बाद exactly, if you could just summarize a little bit of the treatment.
So essentially the way that we would screen people for corona is you need to meet two criteria. एक तो ये that within the last 14 days you've traveled from an area where there is coronavirus. Usually, I mean, if you look at the WHO, they say coming from the Wuhan or Hubei province, right? Over at AKU, we're a little bit more generous in this, and any of the other areas also in China where they're coming from. So that's the first, within 14 days. Or within the 14 days if you've met somebody with the virus, right? So, and with this, if you have any respiratory tract infections, right? So fever with cough, etc. So if you meet both criteria, then we say you're a suspected case. Or in CDC's language, you're a PUI, person under investigation. And if you fit this criteria, then you get the swab done, and you see if you're positive or not. The swab result comes back usually within 24 hours. But if somebody is a PUI, they automatically get admitted into an isolation room. They get the swab done, and if they're negative, they get moved out. So that's what it is. There is no treatment for this at this point. A lot of drugs have been used on it. The problem is, if I have a cold and I take potato juice, I will get better anyways because colds get better, right? So it's very difficult to know, okay, did the dawaii make you better, or did you get better yourself? And the only way to know is that this side of the room I treat, this side I don't treat, and you see who gets better. And those studies are underway right now.
So it's a symptomatic treatment,
it's just
basically.
Symptomatic treatment. Sorry, sir, you had a question.
So I believe we haven't been able to come up with the vaccination so far. The world hasn't been able to. So what if we come up with a treatment or a vaccination for this virus? So how are we seeing it going away? I think you've pretty much answered this question.
So a lot of the reduced rates, and remember when I say 2, it infects 3 or 2 people, that's numbers called the R0, and that assumes that आपने कुछ भी नहीं किया. So a lot of the reduction that you're seeing is the finding and isolation of patients and letting them go only when they are now negative the virus. And this is all the public health work that, so if we had not done anything, it would just kept going up and up and up. And that's what's reducing the cases. So most people get better, they khatam ho jata hai. For the vaccine is difficult to make because generally, and we've tried to make vaccines for coronavirus before. I mean, we're all looking for the cure for the common cold, right? So, but coronaviruses mutate really fast. So it's difficult to find a vaccine which will keep working against this virus. But there's work going on it. In terms of treatment, generally, even for influenza, for example, if I get influenza, I will not take any medicines, any antiviral. It's reserved pretty much only for people who would either get really bad disease or are really sick. Because even, we have the flu, for example, disease, the drug. Flu ki bimari lasts for 3 days. If I take the drug, the medicine, I will get better a few hours earlier. So it's not worth it. Iska probably yahi hoga, right? So the treatment, the medication is really for people, those people who are dying. The sickest of the sick. Infection control and public health measures is what is going to bring the cases down.
So if it is known that all of these kind of viruses are coming up from bats, so are we doing anything about it? I mean, what are we thinking about the bats?
Bat soup? No. So actually, it's not. We're not doing anything about it because, unfortunately, when the human-animal interface becomes so close, you start seeing these spillages. This is corona bats, but if you look at influenza, it's birds and influenza. So the same story with influenza, and that's how bird flu comes into humans, and that's how you had this big pandemic in 2009. Where there was some bird, some pig, some human mixing together and getting a new virus. So we know this is going to happen. This is, so we can't kill the bats or treat the bats.
तो फ्लू सीजन जो है आता है यूएस में भी आता है उनके फ्लू सीजन आता है तो do we have like a flu season that comes every year in Pakistan and is it more dangerous than a pandemic like जो हम देख रहे हैं is it more dangerous?
So again it depends आप dangerous किसको कह रहे हैं?
Like do more people die of that than a pandemic?
Yes. So अगर ये वाला कोरोना तो पाकिस्तान में है ही नहीं. So nobody's died of this so far. Touch wood. So मगर flu जो है उसका season So one important thing to keep in mind is that flu aam zaban mein and flu for a medicine doctor is completely different. Yeah. So if I say flu, I'm talking about influenza alone, right? Yeah. So we have a influenza ka season जो कि आजकल चल रहा है. It starts about in end of November-ish and lasts about till March or February. And to give you an idea, as of just January, the AKU lab reported about almost 150 cases of influenza.
Yeah,
right?
I have another question.
Yeah,
so, you know, there's AKU and there's Liaquat and there are other hospitals. Do all hospitals share their data in a central unit, a center of infectious diseases or whatever?
So the government has a list of reportable diseases. Influenza is one of them, as is things like dengue and chikungunya and measles and so on and so forth. So I can't vouch for other hospitals, but most hospitals are required to report to the government their cases. So yes, it is. How frequently the government shares with us is a matter of thing. So.
Yes, one more question about the vaccine related. I've heard that Gilead company is a very famous thing. They have they're conducting trials in China, clinical trials, and they're testing out a vaccine. Is this correct?
No. So they're testing out a drug, not a vaccine. So vaccine or drug में सबसे बड़ा फर्क है कि vaccine बीमारी से prevent करता है. So you would give a vaccine to somebody before they get an infection. A drug is something you'll give somebody to after they develop an infection for treatment. So they're, doing a trial on a drug. I believe the one you're talking about is one of the HIV drugs actually. And as of 3 or 4 days ago, I believe China actually has come up with one drug actually for this virus. But yeah, so drug trials are actually on the way.
Okay. There. Now, if, for example, at the moment AKU is equipped for a potential epidemic in Karachi or let's say in the regional area, would it be possible for other laboratories or pathological laboratories to set up having these kits and having the infrastructure to test?
Yes, so any lab that does a PCR test, which is something, for example, what you do for hepatitis C treatment, you do a lot of PCR for dengue, no, we don't do that anymore, but there are a lot of PCR tests. So you can do the test now, but you have to keep in mind the other aspect of this. So I'm a lab, an independent lab, right? The question is, would I invest in a disease जो कि पाकिस्तान में है नहीं अभी? And is it worthwhile for me to do it? So generally for tests which are very rarely done, usually just some reference labs do it, and a commercial lab may actually not invest in that. So to answer your question, can they do it? Yes. Will they do it? Unless we get cases, yes, unlikely they will do it. And unless we expect a huge burden to come in, I don't think it's worthwhile even asking a lot of labs to do it. I mean, I would rather have them do the influenza PCR test because that's a lot more common.
And can one on an individual basis find out that do you have the COVID-19 or can you find out yourself?
Without the test?
Yeah, without the test?
No.
So how does one die in this?
Usually with a pneumonia, the virus infecting the lungs.
You mentioned bird flu. Would you like to connect it with the antimicrobial resistance in livestock?
Sorry, bird flu, what?
Antimicrobial resistance, livestock, and the amount of antibiotics given to livestock, that how harmful it becomes.
So bird flu has nothing to do with the antibiotic resistance, which is my other passion, which is bacteria. Yeah, which are bacteria which are developing more and more resistance to antibiotics, to the point that now actually we do see infections which we cannot treat. These bacteria are now resistant to all antibiotics we have available. So the time is coming soon where you have a urine infection and there's nothing we can do about it. It's like, thank you, but sorry, we have nothing left. And part of the driver of this is use of antibiotics in livestock, and also obviously, unfortunately in Pakistan, using antibiotics off the counter. Gala kharaba, antibiotic le li. Pet kharaba, flagyl le li, which is an antibiotic, right? And every time you do it, it takes a year for your normal bacteria to come back to its normal. A year, right? And these bacteria are really, really, really important. But bird flu is actually when these wild birds interact with domestic birds, or human influenza goes into the bird or into another animal, and then a new virus comes out. So that's a whole new other story. which I don't think we have much time for, but the story is very similar to this. So it goes from birds to another animal and then humans. If we get infected with bird flu, unfortunately for the virus, we die, and we usually don't transmit it to anybody else because we're not birds. वो बेचारा अंदर में घुसता है, confuse जाता है, हमको मार देता है, right? But the fear is that the virus will mutate into a form which can go from human to human, and in that case, because nobody's seen this, no human in the world has seen this, it'll spread really fast, right? So and that's going to happen. It will happen. The question is when will it happen? That
we still have time for a few more questions.
Yes.
So.
You showed us a world map, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting part is that the countries or region considered as a developed countries like America, Canada, and Australia, they are affected by the coronavirus. And countries in region like Africa, South America, and Pakistan or Iran, like they are not affected by these. So is this coincidence or something? It's about lifestyle or what's that?
Yeah, it's because of lack of resources. Those countries got the test first, right? So a country which is white, has no infection, doesn't mean कि infection नहीं है. Just so we don't know कि infection है कि नहीं है. Case may not be detected there. Also, these developed countries actually have a lot more resources to capture and detect cases. They have the systems and build. Over here, for example, in Pakistan, we've had to build the system ground up. And a lot of countries may not want to put the resources for a disease जो कभी आएगी नहीं यहाँ पे. So a lot of it may be case detection, as opposed to lack of cases occurring. So yeah, so we can be fairly certain. So now we have a lot of Chinese in Pakistan, right? So in Karachi we have a lot of Chinese, and we know that the virus will come through a Chinese or somebody coming from China. We also have a lot of people who study in China and come back. The Chinese in Pakistan tend to be concentrated in just certain areas. So to give you an example, we have the CZEC, the nuclear power plant area, where there are about close to 9,000 to 10,000 Chinese living over there. And they usually go to just one or two sort of doctors, and then from there they go Aga. So a lot of the shuru mein, the suspected cases we're seeing were from those areas. After, I think it was 20th, the other thing that we did is that we stopped a lot of flights coming from China, right? So we know that it doesn't really help because people find ways to come in the country, but it does stem the amount of people coming in to the country. So we probably don't have any cases, right? Also, if we had a lot of cases, you would expect to see people coming in with sort of a lot of respiratory symptoms. Okay, apart from the normal flu, wala, we're not seeing any more than usual. So the answer is probably no, just because I think we got onto this a little fast. We, as in the world, we got onto this a little fast. Let's just hope it. So we have now a new epicenter in Singapore where there are a lot of cases coming up. But we keep changing our strategy.
So there is a sort of a lot of panic going on around the world about this virus. So you watch news channels and you see a lot of such news, and there is a chaos in general population basically, and they are not aware of the criticality and the things that you have just shown us over here. So is there any institute or organization anywhere in the world which has taken up this initiative and to bring awareness about and making people, to not to be so worried about this thing, because people are afraid of traveling abroad, and then they are, that phobia that people have, not to, interact with Chinese people a lot. Even where I live in my apartments building, we have one Chinese person over there, and then, that person, it's been quite a while that person haven't been back to China, but then people are, refraining, to interact with that person. So, anything being done about that?
Yeah, so I think the key thing is cutting the the noise and getting to the real information. And the problem is, as humans now, we get bombarded with information all the time. Some true, some not. And really, if somebody needs to know what's real and what's not, you need to seek it out now, as opposed to assuming कि वो आपके पास आएगा. So sites like WHO, CDC, the ECDC, European CDC, they actually have very good information for the common person. But WHO has been this time, and WHO has its faults, a lot of faults, but WHO this time has actually made these posters addressing key sort of myths about it. Now, I may not agree with the posters. There was one about sesame oil, and not useful was in a color which is difficult to see, and I was like, WHO keh raha sesame oil istemal karo. Magar the thing is ke, if you want to tell people to get sort of good information, these are very good sites. WHO, CDC, ECDC, European CDC, and then from there on. And this is the mandate to give information. Each institute also has tried to do it. So for example, I don't want to sing the AKU, I don't want to plug AKU too much, but AKU's been taking out information. The government's been taking a lot of information. The problem is that when you get bombarded with so much misinformation, your mind automatically becomes either skeptical or everything becomes a conspiracy. So that's a
okay. Now, am I wrong in assuming that it is possible that common cold or flu can also lead to pneumonia if you are in that age group or weak or something like that? Now, comparing that with the coronavirus or beta, what is the difference?
Yeah. So to answer your question, one is a small correction. So the common cold and flu are different things, right? So common cold is a lot of different viruses. Nobody dies of common cold. Influenza flu can lead to two things. It can either infect the lung directly, causing a virus pneumonia, but very frequent. What can happen is after the infection is gone, the virus is gone, your immune system does get weaker, and you can get infected with regular bacteria. After that, so a secondary infection. How is this different from corona? Actually, the answer is I don't know, because we don't have a lot of information back as yet. So the biggest series we had did not go into the symptoms, did not go into why people died, and we will get this information, but it takes a long time to sort of get information, collate it, publish it. The journals have to peer review it, so the cycle of information coming in tends to be not as rapid in it. So I can maybe answer your question next month, but not today.
Yeah, we'll meet again.
I should preface this with, might be a stupid question, and so profound apologies if it is. You said that it's not a question of if or when vis-a-vis the bird flu. And the reason for that apparently was that it could become one that goes from humans to humans, right? Why isn't that also true of the coronavirus?
It already did.
Could it bypass the human, the animal vector?
No, it already did.
It did. So why aren't we worried about it? Because it's not as lethal. The fatality rate isn't high enough.
So you're right. So the answer to your question, we are worried about it. If we were not worried about it, the world would not be mobilized. We would not be doing all the things we're doing. So we are worried about this. Okay. And if you just let it go, it probably will just sweep the world. Same with influenza, and that's why you have influenza surveillance sites everywhere, which keep checking kaun se flu ke viruses aa rahe duniya mein. So we are worried about it. And if I give you a similar example, the 2009 wala jo influenza jo spread the world, that was bird influenza going into a pig.
Right.
And that pig also getting infected with human influenza, and the new virus coming out was able to infect humans. Right?
So when you said it's not a question of if, but a question of when, you meant it specifically for one kind of virus, or no, you meant it in general for
I meant it for these viruses which mutate and change and are able to cross the animal-human barrier.
I see.
So that would be the coronavirus, influenza, and so on and so forth. The question is not every time that it does this, does the disease it caused, is it very severe?
I see.
Right, so it's not like the movie Contagion.
So just a recommendation, the technical advisory group you're in, it's the government that is formed, right? Is there a possibility that the PEMRA regulates information in electronic and print media? And now because they're going towards digital regulations as well, if this group can recommend that news like these can be contained.
So the problem is that that clashes also with freedom of press also. But generally, most information coming out is curated. But if a news breaks, and I'll give you a good example of a news breaking. 2 days ago, Monday we had a patient admitted who did have coronavirus, and it was the normal wala coronavirus, and that was splashed onto the screen, say corona. And you know, they're not wrong, it was corona, but it wasn't ye wala corona. It wasn't a beta. It was a light one, it was the normal wala corona, corona light. It was corona light. So, but the thing is, the government knew about this, right? And the government then, it stopped eventually. But when the news breaks, no news channel checks for the government keep break karne again, because everybody wants to be the first, the breaking news person. Similarly, information messages that come out through the government. So I think the press is a little bit more regulated in some ways, for the good, for better or for worse. It's the social media which is not regulated, and that's where a lot of people, for some people, Facebook is their news outlet.
Have you been told by any section of the press during your expertise as an infectious?
Yeah. So I've spoken to. Yeah. So I spoke to Jung, and they published an article I think this weekend, and I was very impressed with this lady's I don't want to say journalistic ethics, I would say, probably. So, for example, she read something new, she called me again, ki ye true hai ki nahi hai, can you correct? Sama was similar. There was another guy, I can't remember where he's from. Again, the news, I think he is. So again, when this corona thing broke on Monday, he called me and said, ki iska ye true hai ki nahi hai, right? So instead of just sort of spreading it out. So there are good journalists over there. But there are also those who just wanted to sort of get it out there. So.
Before moving to physical people, since this event is live, we have a few questions on our comment board there.
I didn't know that, I've been so nervous, yeah.
So I will just throw some out there.
Yeah.
So the first one is that, are general probiotics helpful in bacterial resistance?
Answer is we don't know, but probably not. So probiotics work on the premise that आपके gut के जो normal bacteria you can replace them by taking a pill with some normal bacteria in them. The point is that it's not just the number of bacteria in your intestines which are important, but it's also the type. And there are millions of it, and each probiotic will only have a couple in them. So the answer to your question, the short answer is we don't know, but probably not at this point. The best probiotic probably for this is actually something called FMT, which is fecal microbiota transplant, where you take poop from one person and give it to the other person, like a stool transplant. And that works really well. It's really gross, but it's like a really good way of getting that sure. So actually the study is ongoing. There's regulation issues with it, right? So because you have to be very careful you're not giving poop from somebody who's sick. And we're actually trying to do a study over here also to see exactly this question, that can we do this to restore get rid of the resistant bacteria.
So another question is that the medical personnel who are dealing with this, are they only bound to hospitals, or are they on field or on ground doing research?
So the different types of medical people who deal with this, the ones who work in the hospital are only in the hospital, but then you also have people called field epidemiologists who actually go out into the field and hunt down people who may have this and give them a call. So the answer is both, depending on what your specialty is.
That was it for the questions there.
Okay, so this new virus is basically a new mutant virus, right? So let's say you're infected with the old virus, like the Middle Eastern or the SARS coronavirus. Is there a possibility that when you are infected with the ordinary coronavirus, that it mutates in your system to become the new coronavirus?
No, unlikely. So viruses usually don't mutate this way, that they would come inside you and mutate automatically. And these sort of viral mutations are not very common. Otherwise, you'd see this happening very, very frequently. And secondly, what we don't know is that if you got MERS, and then if this corona goes in you, will you be immune or not? Because we haven't had somebody unlucky enough to get both so far. Having said this particular virus is very similar to SARS, the Purana wala SARS. It's not as closely related to the MERS, and Purana SARS khatam ho gaya.
So what makes it different then? If it's very similar to the SRS.
So it's not exactly the same. So the proteins on it are slightly different than the SARS wala protein. So it is its own virus. It's sort of like me asking what makes you different from your neighbor. You're both humans, right? So you're different. You have the same everything, but there are differences between the two of you.
Thank you.
Seeing that there are no more questions.
Thank you.